Okay, now we're going to be doing the sine and cosine, only this time it's translated. That just means that we're moving it around. Okay, just shifting it around. We've already done any shape changing we're going to do. Now we're just taking that changed shape and shifting it. All right. So that's what translating means, just shifting. In 1900, all the world's mathematical knowledge could be written in about 80 books. Today it would take more than 100,000 books. That's a lot. All right, amplitude, period, frequency, those we now know from last class's lecture. Now we're going to be talking about translated. The function is moved vertically or horizontally. All right, so this is just another, unfortunately there's no animation to it, so we're going to move on. All right, translating a trig function. Notice we now are adding in C and D that we didn't have before. C and D in both of these. These are what we are adding. Notice the minus C, so just like all the other times with our x value, you're going to be flipping the sign. So if it said minus 2, then it's a shift of positive 2. Okay, just trying to get my power going. It's yelling at me that it's not powered. Okay, got it fixed. All right, so translating a trig function. We've added C and D. We know what A and B do. We did that last class. Now we're going to be adding in C and D. C, being connected to the x value, will be shifting this horizontally, right? It is connected in there with the x. D, on the other hand, will be shifting it vertically. It's hanging out here, all right? So it's really more connected to the y because of it being all the way on the outside of the function. All right, so let's see what that means. Okay. Here we have now, notice the little box. On your test, you're going to have boxes, just like this. You have to fill these out. I need to see this for every graph you make. You're going to need to show me these values. Okay, the amplitude, in this case, with nothing on there, is a 1, right? Because there's a 1 sitting out here. My period, again, it's a 1, so it's just 2 pi over 1, which is 2 pi. My horizontal shift is what's inside. In this case, it's going to be negative pi over 2. My vertical shift, notice I have a 0, so my vertical shift is 0. I've got my 4 things laid out. It's a period of 2 pi, so my tick marks are marked with 2 pi, and then half, and times 3. I even have my amplitude marked with a 1. We'll go ahead and give it a negative 1 down here. But now this is where the colors are going to come in very handy. This is a sine function. Sine would normally follow this pattern. We did this last class. Okay, that would be my normal sine. But now I'm going to change color, and so should you, to whatever set of colors you want. But now I'm going to shift it. I am shifting it negative pi over 2. If I look at my graph, pi over 2 is 1 tick mark. So I'm shifting it backwards, negative 1 tick mark. So this point here becomes 3 pi over 2. This one becomes pi. All of these will shift backwards 1 tick mark. Oh, Lordy, and I did that wrong, didn't I? I apologize. You guys are probably laughing at me. Mrs. Cronquist, that's not how you do it. Okay, sorry about that. Here. It should have been up, down, up, That's what it should have looked like. Yeah, it's kind of a bad one. We're going to put it more there. I apologize. So, now, see how easy that is to do to make that mistake. Okay, so now that's my shifted. So my shifted is actually, notice it looks very much like a cosine. There we go. That's shifted. I have shifted this pi over 2 in the negative direction, to the left. Alright, so what do we have next? Okay, this one is shifted pi over 4. Alright, so my amplitude, again, is 1. My period is, again, unchanged, so it's 2 pi. But my horizontal shift is plus pi over 4. This time I'm going positive. And I've got a cosine. So notice I've laid out my standard graph already. Going up 1, then down to 1. Alright, now I'm going to plot those the normal values as cosine. So cosine would normally do this. We know this because we did this before. Alright, now I'm going to be doing the shift, so I'm going to change color. Now I'm shifting forward pi over 4. Pi over 4 is half a tick mark. Since my first tick mark is pi over 2, pi over 4 is half of that. So each one is going to be going forward half a tick mark. And there we go. And now I go ahead and I graph this. And I go down, nice curvy bottom, nice curvy top. And, whoops, a little bit of a wrinkle. There we go. Good. So, this is my cosine, and it is shifted forward pi over 4. Alright, now we're talking about vertical shifts. We have a downward 1. Alright, so let's fill in our box. Amplitude is 1. Period doesn't change, so it's 2 pi. No horizontal shift. My vertical shift is negative 1. It's just what's hanging out here. Alright, I've got a standard graph laid out. I've got all the way to 2 pi. That's all marked up for me. I'm going from 1 to negative 1. Horizontal shift is 0, vertical shift. So now we're going to plot our basic cosine. We're just going to plot y equals cosine x. Alright, so cosine starts high, drops and drops, middle and back up. Same with the other direction. Okay, now I've got to change my color because I'm going to do my shift. I'm going to shift downwards 1 unit. So each of these points will go down basically 1 tick mark. There we go. And I can draw through, this. So I have a little up, nothing down, nice smooth curve. Sorry, I hit my little guard thing. There we go. Okay, so that is my cosine graph shifted down 1 unit. Hopefully this is not too confusing. You gotta make sure you're getting your homework done because that's what's going to keep you on track and help you practice it so that you understand it for yourself. You can't understand it if it's just me telling you. Alright, sine x plus 3. So first we're going to graph y equals sine x. So the amplitude is 1, period is unchanged, no horizontal shift, but a positive 3 vertical shift. Okay, so y equals sine x. So sine starts at 0, 0, and goes up. And the other direction. Alright, Now I'm doing a vertical shift of +3. So I change colors. Now I'm going up 3. So this is 1, 2, 3. So I shift all the way up here. And back to the middle. Drop, there we go, and middle. Now over here, not too far over. And then back to the middle. Okay, and now I draw my line. And there we go. So my graph is completely off the axes now. Okay, let's put C and D together in a cosine function. Alright, so my amplitude is 1, my period is unchanged, my horizontal shift is a, whoops, I think I made it look like plus, minus pi over 2, and a plus 1. Alright, so I'm going to have to use 3 colors this time. So I'm going to plot my original. So blue is going to be my y equals cosine x. So cosine starts and does this. Starts at its amplitude. Okay. Now I'm going to change to purple, and I'm going to do my horizontal shift of negative pi over 2. Pi over 2 is 1 tick mark, so everything shifts backwards 1 tick mark. So I have here, here, there we go. And there we have it. Now I'm going to shift color again, and I'm going to do the plus 1. So every purple tick mark, every purple dot has to move upwards 1. So this is now my graph. So now I'm going to put the line through it. And there we go. Shifted 2 directions, sorry. Standard plot and then 2 shifts. So let's see. The purple was y equals, oops. Cosine of x plus pi over 2. And the red was the entire function. There we go. Okay. Alright. Now we're going to do it with a sine function. Amplitude is 1, period is 2 pi. Horizontal shift is negative pi. Vertical shift is minus 1. Okay, standard graph is laid out. We're going to first plot y equals sine x. So sine starts at 0, 0 and goes up. There we go. Change color. And now I'm going negative pi. Pi is 2 tick marks, so every point shifts backwards 2 tick marks, which means my 2 pi comes all the way to there. And my 3 pi over 2 to here. So everything's shifting way down. Now, this is going to be shifted way off my graph. If I wanted to, because of the periodic function, I could actually plot these last 2 points on the other side. So I'm going to change it to the highlighter and show you what I mean. So I could have brought points from off my graph and plotted those 2 points instead of these 2 at the other end. I'm going to leave it with the 2 at the far end because that's what it truly shifted would look like. But you could do it that way if you run out of paper, you don't have space to get everything on your paper, you need to bring some from the other side, that's okay. Alright, so now we're going to plot at this and we're going to move everything down 1. So each of these has to come down 1 unit. Just the purples. I missed one of my purple ones. This guy I didn't shift. He should be there. Okay, back to the reds. I was going to have you skipping something. Down 1 unit. That's all the further I have to go. Now I can draw my line. And there we have it. Alright, horizontal phase shift. This is if we have both a change of period and a shift, a horizontal shift. Okay, this starts becoming a little bit more difficult. This gets a little odd. If, okay, there are 2 possible ways you can see this written. If you have what's here, what you see on the graph here, sorry, if you have this, or you could have y equals a sine b parenthesis x minus c plus d. Then you don't have to worry about the change in phase shift, okay, because it's all set out for you. But oftentimes you see it as the highlighted version. In the highlighted version, that B is modifying the period. So what we'd have to do is instead of having a horizontal shift of, in this case, C, you would have a horizontal shift of C over B. I know that's weird. We're going to do it a couple times with you. Just skip 13 narrative. Alright, so we're looking at these all together. Amplitude is now 2, so I've got to put a 2 up here, and a -1 and a -2. My period is 2 pi over 3, because 3 is B. Oops, sorry, I should have highlighted that. 3 is B. So my period is 2 pi over 3. Half of 2 pi, remember the 2's cross off and I end up with pi over 3. Half of pi over 3 is pi over 6. 3 times that is pi over 2. We'll put the negatives down. Alright, I've got the amplitude taken care of. I've gotten the period taken care of. Now I'm going to do my horizontal shift. Well, now it has to be, I'm going to kind of write it down over here. Pi over 4 over 3. So this becomes pi over 12. Alright, that seems like a weird one, but that's okay. Alright, and our vertical shift is down 2. Alright, so we're first going to plot our original. Our first plot, because we've already changed all the amplitude and period, our first point, the blue points, will be y2 sine 3x. Okay? So, sine starts at 0, 0, then goes up to amplitude. So it's all the way up here. all the way down to -2. Keeping my nice smooth curve. I've got this and there. Okay, that's what that is. Now we're going to do purple. Purple is going to be with the horizontal shift. So this becomes y equals 2 sine parentheses 3x minus pi over 4. Now, my horizontal just is pi over 12. Look at your first tick mark, pi over 6. So pi over 12 is half of that. So really, even though it's a weird number, pi over 12, it's half a tick mark. So just think of it as half a tick mark. And this is a positive shift, so it's going to be half a tick mark forward to the right. So that means this one is going to be here, here, and here. This means they're all moving forward half a tick mark. So that makes it not too difficult. Alright, now my red I'm going to do is my vertical shift. Now I'm going to drop each of these points 2 units, which means that a point sitting on the x-axis, x-axis, is going to come down to this lower point right here. So all of these will come down too. So I'm just doing all the x's first. Now my mins and maxes. So my maximums will drop to the x-axis. I have 2 of them. My mins are going to drop an additional 2 units. So they'll be coming all the way down here. Now I've got them all plotted out. It's just a matter of sketching in the line. And there we go. And there we have it. Okay? Color helps. Color, color, color. In fact, on the quick test, at the end of the chapter, if you use color, you get 2 bonus points. So use color. Get used to using color. It will really help you keep track of what you're doing. Otherwise, it gets really complicated. Alright, we're going to do one with cosine now. Alright, let's take a look at this. My amplitude is on... Oops. My amplitude is 1/2. My period is 2 pi over 2, so it's just pi. My horizontal shift, again I'm going to write it down here, is pi over 6 over 2. This is, again, pi over 12. It's going to be a negative because that was a positive pi over 6 up there. And my vertical shift is +1. Alright, my period is pi, so I'm going to go out here and mark pi. Pi over 2, pi over 4, 3 pi over 4. Mark it the other way. Negative pi over 2, negative pi over 4, negative 3 pi over 4. I've got a 1, but now it's 1/2. Now I can choose how I mark this graph. So I can make this be 1/2. So I'm going to make this mark right here 1/2. And negative 1/2. Alright, now in blue I'm going to graph y equals 1/2 cosine 2x. Alright, cosine starts at amplitude, which in this case is 1/2, and then drops down and back up. There we go. Now we're going to switch colors to purple. And purple I'm going to be doing my horizontal shift. So it becomes y equals 1/2 cosine 2x plus pi over 6. So my horizontal shift is pi over 12. Well, when I look at this, it's a little more difficult, but pi over 4 times 3 is 12, so it's only 1/3 of a tick mark I'm shifting. I'm shifting backwards to the negative direction, 1/3 of a tick mark. So they're really going to be sitting almost next to the previous point. Now we add 1 to them, so every one of these shifts up 1 full unit. So we're going to switch to red. I'm going to shift up a full unit. Well, if this distance right here is a half, 1 full unit is double that. Okay. Alright, this should be here. This one actually down a little. Okay. Here and all the way to the highest point. And the other point. There we go. And sketch it in. And that's our final answer. Alright, we're now going to include a negative, a rotation here. So, this one, we have an amplitude of 2. Remember, it's always positive. We have a period, no b. Yay, makes life a little bit easier. So my period is still 2 pi. My horizontal shift is pretty straightforward. It's just a plus pi over 4. Vertical shift is 0. But this is because of that negative rotated. Alright, so let's mark our graph, 2 pi. Pi over 2, and 3 pi over 2. Negative 2 pi. Negative pi over 2. Negative 3 pi over 2. My amplitude is 2, so 1, 2. Negative 1, negative 2. Alright. Now, with that negative, my first graph, y equals negative 2 sine x, sine starts at 0, 0, but because of the negative, instead of going up as it normally would, it goes down. And so it's going to look like this. That's my standard for the negative 2. Now I just have to shift this pi over 4. Pi over 4 is half a tick mark. And I'm shifting it positive. So it's going there, 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 and there. And there we go. Switch to my drawing. You can come up. And there we go. See, that's pretty easy. Alright, last one. A rotated cosine. I need you to see all of these possibilities. I know it's a pain, but there you go. Use your own if you've seen them. Okay, my amplitude is 2/3 because of the negative. It is rotated. The period is 2 pi over 2. So my period is pi. My horizontal shift, well, pi over 3 over 2 is pi over 6. So my horizontal shift is pi over 6, so positive because it's a negative up there. Vertical shift is 0. Okay, so I've teased out all the information. I'm going to make my graph. My period is pi. Then I have pi over 2 and pi over 4 and 3 pi over 4. Do the negatives. And yes, you have to do this every time. If I'm doing it every time, you got to do it every time. That's just the way it is. Otherwise, you never learn. So you have to do it this way. Alright, my amplitude is 2/3. So I'm going to mark right there. Whoops. And right there as my 2/3. And my negative 2/3. Alright, now I'm going to graph this. This is cosine. So instead of starting at its amplitude, it's rotated with that negative, so I start at the bottom. So I'm going to start at negative 2 pi over 3. That's the bottom of my curve. So then I come up and back down again. Alright. Now I just do my vertical shift. My vertical shift is pi over 6. Well, I have pi over 4. 6 is actually 2/3 of that. So, I'm going to shift these forwards 2/3 of a tick mark. Almost, but not quite, on top of the next tick mark. And there we go. That's my shift. So now all I have to do is draw this in. Colors, 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 colors. I can't repeat enough how many colors. Oh, you know what? I did not mark that other tick mark. I'm naughty. See, this one would have shifted to here. I missed that one. Okay, there we go, and we are done with this lesson. Practice, practice, practice. Use graph paper on all your homeworks. Use graph paper. Alright, here we go.